Good morning, USA! We've got a feeling that it's gonna be a wonderful day. Anyway, American Dad has given us a lot of characters with less than stellar morals, but maybe that's why we love them. Even characters we once thought were harmless can show off a more sinister side. And because our audience seemed to enjoy these videos of villains, we thought it was time to take a look at who is the worst in Langley Falls. Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is American Dad Villains, Evil to Most Evil.
Some people are just bad and they always will be.
For this list, we'll be starting from the least evil and working our way down to the most ruthless, malicious, and downright vile. Up first, we're placing Sensei Tom at the bottom of the list. As far as villains go, he was the most harmless, but we had to place him somewhere because he was a terrible influence on not only Snot, but all of his students.
Use your anger! Attack! Attack!
He made them stronger, but he also encouraged them to beat anyone that insulted them. He didn't mind that Snot was about to be kicked out of school and was only willing to give him up as a student if he lost to Steve, who Tom already considered too much of a wimp. Up next, we have Mertz. Of all of Vince Chung's friends, he becomes the most active and aggressive bully at Langley High. We had to place him low since, much like Sensei Tom, he had the capability to be good. There's been more than a few times Mertz has been humane towards the kids he usually bullies. He began spending time with Snot since they were able to connect over their fathers passing away, and even took the time to let Steve know he respected his choice to be celibate. Mertz is a conflicting character. We can't place him higher since he doesn't appear to focus on tormenting people outside of school, but he's still a villain of sorts who deserves to be included with the rest. Emperor Zing places next. While he does support abducting and enslaving, we had to place him lower than one might expect. Alright, why is that? Well, he was still reasonable enough to give everyone a trial and a chance to prove that they were being separated from their true love. He had an underhanded method to be sure he didn't lose any labor at his mall, but he was an approachable leader.
You failed!
And we cut him a bit of slack since the only reason he wanted a shopping center and people to run it was because of how betrayed he was by Roger. It's unclear what happened to Zing after everyone rose up, but we like to think he learned his lesson. Principal Lewis is not the best educator, and certainly not the best person.
It looks like we got ourselves a magic moron.
He's an amusing character and becomes fairly good friends with Stan over the course of the series, which shows his more sympathetic side, but he also actively threatens his students and staff, even going as far as to break a full pitcher of coffee over Steve's face. Though in Brian's defense, that was after Steve hit a girl in school grounds. He steals a police car while handcuffed, gets the boys involved with counting cards, and crashes his car into stands due to texting. And that's not even mentioning his hobby of fighting dogs. While we're on the subject of bad role models, Jack Smith is worth bringing up next. A jewel thief that abandoned his family, he made a living from crime. He neglected and abused Stan during the time he was around and only turned himself in to help protect Steve. And that's the main reason we don't place him higher. Majority of the time, Jack is in jail or on the run. But when he does make an appearance, he comes a bit closer to having a relationship with his son. When Steve is kidnapped by Krampus, Jack eventually steps in and saves his family from Santa, though it ends with him having to take the role as Krampus for the rest of the series. We couldn't resist adding Roger onto this list. Though we give him his own placement in our full Good to Evil video, this alien causes way too much chaos not to be here. Roger is without a doubt one of the most selfish, but he has redeeming qualities. While he tries to push the idea that he doesn't care for the Smiths, he's also there to help with their problems.
Take my hand!
Roger's suggestions are not always the best or the healthiest solutions, but he is protective of them, and their safety comes before a lot of other messes. Roger is very selfish, and he's responsible for a lot of destruction, but at the end of the day, he cares about the Smiths, even if he has a hard time showing it.
Hey, this feels good. Do you like it?
And for that reason, we've decided to be kind to Roger and keep his ranking relatively low. Next, we have Terry Bates. Terry, unlike many others on this list, was a nice guy for the most part. He was focused on building a family and a career, working and living with his partner Greg.
Oh, Greg, look, that's the public toilet where we fell in love.
But when Roger took the place as their adopted son, Michael, viewers began to see that the relationship was not as perfect as it appeared. Terry frequently manipulated Greg into doing things disguised as artistic or classy. When Roger threatened to expose him, Terry's response response was to lure their son into the middle of the lake so he could kill him. After killing what he thought was his child, Terry happily went back to his life like it was nothing, and Greg supported it, not realizing it wasn't an accident.
He didn't fit into the skinny jeans. He didn't fit in.
That's ruthless, and we only place him this low on our list due to the fact that Roger wasn't actually killed. But still, that's pretty terrible. Santa is usually seen as a good guy, but since the show revolves around the Smith family, we had to take into account that Santa is on the hunt for them every year.
How dare you come to my house?
Steve riddling him with bullets earns the youngest Smith a spot on the naughty list, but it was a mistake, and watching happily as his elves cornered the Smiths like a pack of animals was cold-blooded. But hey, at least Santa is nice to everyone else in Langley, but he certainly holds a grudge. Steverino was Steve's clone for a single episode. The entire story was stressful, with Stan and Francine trying to find a way to save their child after Haley ran off with Jeff. Any conflict happening between the two of them usually results in a lot of messes, but this was on another level. Steve was slowly being ruined by Francine's enabling, and Steverino simply snapped under all the pressure and tried to take Steve's place before killing him.
Those were brand new sneakers.
We don't place him higher since not only was Steverino unsuccessful when trying to murder Steve, but he also met his end by one of the cats he kept locked up. A bitter end to a kid who could have had a happy life.
I'll see you in hell.
We're ranking the Housewives and the Ladybugs together due to their similar approaches. With the Ladybugs, they weren't selling products, but all the women were invested in only one thing: appearance. They staked a lot on their reputations, and anything that could put that in danger had to be eliminated.
We wouldn't want you to end up like poor Anne Fleming.
And the Smith family always seems to be on the wrong end of these conflicts, with Francine nearly being crushed by shopping carts, and Steve and Haley being caught up with a dirty cop. The Thai general is likable, but he is a villain. Taking Stan and his friends prisoner, he has a weird way of getting information, using truth serum rather than typical torture methods.
Torture time!
It wasn't until he encountered Stan and Haley during their race that he resorted to more primitive and brutal methods, informing Stan that he lost his status. He's also kinder to the men that work for him than many other leaders, letting them have a chill zone and seen having small heart-to-hearts with them. He was described as a precious little half-man, and we can't help but agree that the Thai general is a lovable foe to have. Avery Bullock is next on our list. Though responsible for running the CIA branch in Virginia, he's not the most stable man for the job. He's constantly using his rank to avoid being imprisoned for his more illegal practices. A lot of the time we see him, he's having some sort of tantrum, showing no interest in his job, doped up on some drugs, or mistreating someone. He had no issue leaving his wife as a hostage in the middle of dangerous territory.
I've been so lonely since my poor wife was taken hostage in Fallujah.
He had completely forgotten about Ricky Spanish killing her on her birthday and was the victim of a scrambler that made him a liability to his country. But we will give him some credit that he was quick to reprimand Stan for protecting him. The hot tub was another one-time appearance, with a lot of viewers even rage-quitting after the episode aired. We had to place him higher on our list, since during this conflict, he was able to successfully manipulate Stan and murder several people. He wasn't defeated, leaving his fate unknown, but we're unable to rank him as a stronger villain since it was implied this was an alternate existence.
There you have it. That's our story. Stan's dead. Good night.
Whether you like him or not, he was able to get the job done and provided a few catchy songs in the process. DJ Iron Monkey wasn't so much a vicious enemy as he was a horrible drain on the earth and its resources. He held whales prisoner, paid loads of money for dwindling materials, and lied about his stance on helping others just so he can gain more popularity. But he was a young guy, and we can understand that the sudden ability to influence people because of his music is something that would be tempting to use in order to get things no one else would have.
But that just made me want it more.
Aren't cork trees endangered?
It's hard to say how much of it was because of his own wants and desires, and how much he was being influenced by those around him who benefited from his fame. You'll never know, since he was taken out when the ship went down. Barry was revealed to have a devious personality, so we have to mention him here. When off of his medication, he's able to use people's former perception of him as a way to let their guard down and eliminate them as a threat.
Go to sleep.
He was more capable being a villain when we first see him, having Steve sent away and trying to claim Stan as his own father until Steve got him to medicate himself again. Barry was defeated easier the next time. His only motivation the second time around was to make Stan and Francine swing with his own parents, and he doesn't really give a good explanation as to why, and is easily taken down by Steve. He seems to become less and less of a threat the more we see him. Nemo, being the Antichrist, earns a very high spot on our list. We realize the Antichrist is a character that appears a few times in the series, but we feel Nemo deserves a special mention as he follows the original timeline of the series, rather than an alternate reality. Unlike Damien and Brickleberry, however, Nemo was a well-behaved kid until his secret was in danger of being revealed. He targeted Steve and used him as a pawn, only after he overheard Stan inform Steve of what Nemo was. So for that reason, we have to give him some slack. He was only interested in getting as many people to like him as possible, so he could fulfill his purpose to rise to power before really doing any damage.
I'll see you again, Stan Smith!
The Crow People is up next. We have to give these people the Bronze Medal of Villainy since they were not only merciless, but had their facade down to the letter. The entire community was in on the idea of taking a single person every year to sacrifice for the harvest, stating that they needed a pure maiden to appease the Crow God.
We gather to make a sacrifice to the Crow God.
We aren't entirely sure where the idea of a crow god comes from, but it clearly resonated with them. And we don't know how long this has been in practice or how many innocent young women had been killed, but the entire town was to blame for allowing it to continue and letting it escalate. Randy the pedophile earns the silver medal. Though he was a temporary character, he made an impression. He became drawn to Steve when he saw Steve abuse his father, no longer believing Stan was capable of running the home.
I used to work over at the water park where I molested a ton of kids.
Afterwards, he lured not only Steve, but all of his friends to the water park where he used to work. When Stan is hunting him down to save Steve, he talks to Randy's mother, who reveals that he has killed children.
He also kills cats!
Randy tells Stan that he comes from a well-to-do family and is a very good lawyer, so he was able to avoid any real punishment for his crimes. We don't get a satisfying conclusion to Randy's story since Stan wasn't able to kill him. The most we can say is that we're happy to not have to deal with him anymore, as he is a repulsive character. A character who showcases some of the depravity lurking in the world. We've already mentioned Roger once on this list, but we felt that his persona, Ricky Spanish, deserved a special mention, as well as the Gold Medal of Evil. This persona was so vile and corrupt that Roger marked him as irredeemable and discontinued his character until he found the costume. He landed people in jail, sexually harassed nuns, and when Stan was in the costume, almost destroyed the entire city. He was glad to leave Steve behind when the deal went wrong, even though Steve had been the only one to believe in Ricky being able to reform himself and had assisted in every confrontation.
Hit him in the head with a shotgun!
Though an unhinged persona, the name of Ricky Spanish is now legendary among the fan base. It'll be interesting to see if he ever returns, since we've only recently learned he's meant to be the brother of the Genie Gold. But what do you think? Who's the most evil among the American dad villains? Let us know in the comment section. Don't forget to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.